World War I movies, most people think of big, loud battle scenes and heroic charges. But here's the truth. A lot of the best films about the Great War flew under the radar, overlooked or forgotten. Why? Because these movies don't just glorify war, they expose its grim, complicated reality. Ready to dive into stories that capture WWI like no other? Let's uncover 10 underrated gems that show the war's real face, beyond the cliches you already know. Jacuzz 1938. If you think WWI films are all about heroism and honor, Jacuzz will turn that idea upside down. Directed by Abel Gance, this French film is more than just a war movie. It's a haunting anti-war poem packed with emotion and surreal imagery. Gance actually remade his own silent 1919 classic, pushing boundaries to deliver a movie so raw and poetic it still shakes viewers today. What sets Jacuzz apart is its powerful ghostly vision of soldiers lost to the madness of war. Instead of cheering on battles, it shows the heavy toll, blending real trench scenes with haunting, dreamlike sequences of fallen soldiers rising from the dead. It's like the war's dead don't rest. They come back to demand justice and remembrance. Veterans of WWI reportedly found it disturbingly accurate, with a truthfulness Hollywood rarely dared to touch. Shot with stunning black and white cinematography, the film pulls you deep into the nightmare of war's endless horror. It's not for the faint of heart or those looking for easy patriotism. Jacuzz strips away glory and exposes the grim, never-ending grief soldiers endured. Despite its artistry, Jacuzz didn't get the love it deserved internationally, mostly because its anti-war message was too heavy for audiences still recovering from global conflict. But for anyone who wants to see WWI portrayed with brutal honesty and creative genius, this film is a must-watch. It's proof that war movies don't have to be boring or one-dimensional. They can be powerful, poetic, and deeply human. Paths of Glory, 1957. Stanley Kubrick's Paths of Glory is the kind of movie that punches you in the gut and doesn't let go. While Kubrick is famous for sci-fi and psychological thrillers, this WWI drama is one of his most biting and emotional films, and it's criminally underrated compared to his other work. Set during the French offensive, the story focuses on Colonel Dax, played by Kirk Douglas, who's caught in the nightmare of military politics and brutal injustice. When a doomed attack fails, Dax fights to save 3 innocent soldiers sentenced to death for cowardice. Sounds like a typical war hero story? Think again. Kubrick turns it into a scathing indictment of how the powerful throw ordinary men to the wolves. The film's sharp, cold cinematography captures the trenches with crushing claustrophobia. But the real star is the raw, emotional intensity. You don't get thrilling battle glory here. Instead, you get the sickening reality of a military machine that values obedience over human life. The courtroom scenes are especially gut-wrenching, exposing the hypocrisy and cruelty hidden behind military discipline. When it was released, Paths of Glory shocked audiences and even sparked bans in France because it challenged national pride and military honor. Yet, veterans praised it for telling the truth that no one else dared. It's a film about the soldiers forgotten by history, sacrificed not on the battlefield but by their own commanders. Kubrick's direction, combined with a powerhouse performance from Douglas, makes Paths of Glory not just a war movie, but a timeless story about power, injustice, and courage. If you want a WWI film that doesn't sugarcoat anything and hits hard every time, this one's your ticket. The Dawn Patrol, 1938. Forget fast jets and CGI dogfights. The Dawn Patrol dives deep into the gritty, terrifying life of WWI fighter pilots, when flying was as dangerous as fighting. This film stars Errol Flynn and David Niven as squadron leaders locked in a deadly cycle of losing friends to the skies above the trenches. But here's the twist. The real enemy might just be the officers sending these young men to their deaths. Set against the backdrop of the skies over Europe, the Dawn Patrol captures the tension and exhaustion pilots felt every day. It's not just the German planes buzzing around, it's the pressure of leadership and the haunting knowledge that survival is mostly luck. The characters grapple with guilt, fear, and frustration, making the film more about their mental battles than just aerial combat. What makes this movie stand out is its honest portrayal of the psychological toll. The camaraderie and heartbreak feel authentic because many of the cast and crew had real wartime experience. Errol Flynn, known for his swashbuckling roles, shows unexpected depth as a commander burdened with impossible choices. The film was so well received that it even inspired a remake in 1939, but the original keeps a rawness that later versions can't match. It didn't glamorize war, and that's why it's been somewhat forgotten by mainstream audiences who prefer their war movies full of glory and explosions. If you want a WWI film that mixes high-flying action with real emotional stakes, The Dawn Patrol delivers. It's a rare look at war through the eyes of men who face death every day, yet still hold on to hope until hope runs dangerously thin. Westfront 1918 to 1930. Hollywood loves to tell war stories from the Allied perspective, but Westfront 1918 gives us a rare, brutal glimpse at WWI from the German trenches. Directed by G.W. Pabst, this German film was revolutionary for refusing to paint the enemy as villains or heroes. It simply shows soldiers caught in the hell of endless fighting. The movie's power comes from its unflinching realism. It doesn't romanticize war. It captures the mud, blood, and boredom of life in the trenches with documentary-like precision. The soldiers suffer not just from enemy fire, but from the crushing weight of fear, exhaustion, and hopelessness. Released just over a decade after the war ended, Westfront 1918 shocked audiences with its honesty. German vets said it was the first film that truly reflected their experience without sugarcoating or propaganda. The use of real locations and authentic gear makes the battle scenes visceral, unlike many Hollywood epics that rely on spectacle over substance. But this film didn't just disturb German audiences, it was quickly banned by the Nazis, who saw it as anti-patriotic and dangerous. That reaction alone tells you how honest and unvarnished Westfront 1918 really is. Despite being nearly a century old, this film still feels relevant, reminding us that soldiers on all sides face the same horrors. It's a bold, sobering anti-war statement that deserves way more attention outside film history circles. Sergeant York, 1941. Most people know Sergeant York as a classic war hero movie. But don't be fooled, this film dives way deeper than typical propaganda. Gary Cooper stars as Alvin York, a humble Tennessee farmer who struggles with a huge moral dilemma. How can a devout Christian justify killing others in war? It's not just about action and battles here, it's about wrestling with conscience and faith when everything around you screams conflict. The movie tells the true story of York's transformation from a pacifist who didn't want to fight into one of the most decorated American soldiers of WWI. Cooper delivers a subtle, heartfelt performance that captures York's inner battle. You see a man torn between his religious beliefs and his sense of duty, which is a rare and refreshing take for a war film made during wartime. It's honest about doubt and fear, not just heroics. Shot during World War II, Sergeant York was meant to inspire Americans, but it's surprisingly complex. The film balances powerful battle scenes with quieter moments that show the heavy cost of war on the human spirit. York's relationships, especially with his family and fellow soldiers, add emotional weight, making his journey feel personal, not just historical. The story doesn't shy away from tough questions about violence, patriotism, and sacrifice. It's not just a celebration of war, but a meditation on what it means to do the right thing in impossible circumstances. When York finally acts, it's not because he's a bloodthirsty hero, but because he's found a way to reconcile his faith with the harsh reality around him. Sergeant York was a massive hit, winning 2 Academy Awards and cementing Cooper's star status. Yet today, many overlook it, dismissing it as old-fashioned or too patriotic. But if you want a WWI film that mixes raw human emotion with the brutal truths of war and asks the questions most avoid, this is one you can't miss. The Big Parade 1925. Before WWI, films had roaring sound or flashy effects. The Big Parade arrived as a silent classic that forever changed how we see war on screen. Directed by King Vidor, this film follows James Apperson, a wealthy young man who joins the army and faces the harsh reality of the trenches, friendship, and love. It was one of the biggest hits of the silent era, yet today, it's surprisingly forgotten. What makes The Big Parade so special is its incredible mix of epic battles and personal stories. The film doesn't just show war as a grand spectacle, It zooms in on the human experience. We see James's transformation from a sheltered rich kid to a soldier who understands the brutal cost of fighting. His bonds with fellow soldiers, whether they're joking, struggling, or dying, bring the war to life in a way few movies dared at the time. King Vidor used thousands of extras and shot massive battle scenes with striking realism, capturing the chaos and fear of trench warfare. But it's the quieter moments that hit hardest: the letters home, the fear before battle, the stolen moments of peace amid the madness. Veterans who saw the film said it was the most honest depiction of WWI they'd ever seen. Despite being silent, the film's emotional punch is loud and clear. It's about loss, courage, and the cost of a war that shaped a generation. And though it's nearly 100 years old, its impact still resonates, reminding us why WWI films matter. The big parade may not be on everyone's radar today, but if you want to see where the war movie genre truly began, this film is a powerful place to start. Aces High, 1976. If you think WWI fighter pilots lived the glamorous life of knights in the sky, Aces High will slam that myth to the ground. This British drama dives headfirst into the terror, fatigue, and madness faced by the men who flew wooden biplanes in death-defying dogfights. Based on the famous play Journey's End, the movie zeroes in on a squadron struggling not just against the enemy, but against the psychological strain of endless war. Peter Firth stars as the young Lieutenant Gresham, suddenly promoted to lead a shattered squadron after his commander is killed. What follows isn't just aerial combat. It's a brutal study of leadership under fire, where every decision could mean life or death for the men below. The film doesn't sugarcoat the horrors of the air war. It shows pilots cracking under pressure, haunted by nightmares, and battling despair alongside enemy planes. What makes Aces High stand out is its gritty realism and focus on mental breakdowns. It's not flashy or heroic. It's grim and raw. The dogfights are intense but feel grounded in the terrifying reality of early air warfare, with fragile planes and inexperienced pilots thrown into the chaos. The emotional toll is front and center, watching young men lose their nerves, their friends, and sometimes themselves. Critics have praised the film's strong performances and unflinching honesty, but it's largely flown under the radar compared to other war movies. That's a shame, because it captures the emotional and physical exhaustion of WWI flying better than most. If you want a war movie that explores what happens when courage runs out, but duty keeps pulling you forward, Aces High is essential viewing. Gallipoli, 1981. When it comes to World War I, the Gallipoli campaign is one of the most brutal and tragic chapters, yet it's rarely shown on screen with the raw honesty it deserves. That changed with Gallipoli, the 1981 Australian film directed by Peter Weir. This movie tells the story of two young men from very different backgrounds who become unlikely friends and soldiers, only to be thrown into the deadly chaos of the Gallipoli Peninsula in Turkey. What makes Gallipoli truly stand out is how it balances sweeping, epic visuals with deeply personal storytelling. The film opens with breathtaking shots of the Australian outback, full of wide-open spaces and sun-drenched landscapes. These scenes perfectly capture the youthful innocence and freedom of the protagonists before the war shatters their world. Mel Gibson plays Archie, a cocky, fast-running athlete with dreams of Olympic glory, while Mark Lee portrays Frank, a sensitive and earnest young man from a different social class. Their growing friendship is the emotional heart of the film, showing how war can bridge divides, but also tear people apart in devastating ways. The movie doesn't pull any punches when it comes to exposing the military blunders and political failures that led to one of WWI's worst disasters. The battle scenes are intense and chaotic, filled with desperate charges, confusion, and overwhelming enemy fire. But it's not just the fighting that stays with you, it's the haunting silence afterward. The film lingers on the empty battlefields and the faces of survivors, communicating the overwhelming sense of loss, betrayal, and futility that followed. Gallipoli refuses to glorify the campaign, instead making it clear just how tragic and unnecessary much of it was. Critics and veterans alike have praised Gallipoli for capturing the spirit and sacrifice of Australian soldiers in a way few films have. Its regional focus doesn't limit its impact. The themes of friendship, courage, and tragic loss hit home for audiences around the world. Gallipoli challenges the usual glorified war movie formula, forcing viewers to confront the true human cost of war and remember the thousands of young lives lost in vain. For anyone interested in WWI films that are both visually stunning and emotionally powerful, Gallipoli deserves a top spot on your watch list. It's not just a war movie, it's a gripping, unforgettable journey into the heart of sacrifice and friendship amid chaos. A Very Long Engagement, 2004. If you think World War I movies have to be all trenches and battles, A Very Long Engagement flips the script with a fresh blend of romance, mystery, and the brutal truth of war. Directed by Jean-Pierre Jeunet, this French film stars Audrey Tautou as Mathilde, a young woman who refuses to accept that her fiancé is dead after the Battle of the Somme. Instead, she embarks on a desperate search across the war-torn landscape to find him. What makes this film so gripping is how it contrasts Jeunet's whimsical, almost magical storytelling style with the harsh realities of the Great War. The cinematography is lush and imaginative, but the story never forgets the horror and heartbreak beneath the surface. Mathilde's journey exposes the chaos of war, disfigured soldiers, shattered towns, and the endless bureaucratic nightmare of military records. Unlike traditional war movies that focus on battle strategies or heroics, A Very Long Engagement puts the spotlight on the civilian experience and the personal costs of war. Mathilde's relentless hope drives the story, showing how love can fuel courage even when faced with overwhelming loss. The film also gives voice to the forgotten soldiers labeled missing in action, highlighting the confusion and sorrow that families endured. The performances are powerful, especially Audrey Tautou's fierce and tender portrayal. The film's blend of suspense, drama, and dark humor creates a unique tone that's both heartbreaking and strangely uplifting. Critics have praised it as one of the best modern takes on WWI, yet it still flies under the radar compared to big-budget war epics. If you're tired of the same old war stories and want a film that explores the emotional wreckage left behind, A Very Long Engagement is a beautiful, haunting choice that stays with you long after the credits roll. Lawrence of Arabia, 1962. Everyone's heard of Lawrence of Arabia, but what many don't realize is just how revolutionary this film was in showing a side of World War I that Hollywood almost always ignores: the Desert War and its tangled politics. Directed by David Lean, this sweeping epic tells the story of T.E. Lawrence, a British officer whose daring exploits helped ignite the Arab revolt against the Ottoman Empire. But this isn't your typical war hero story. It's a sprawling, complex portrait of a man and a war that challenged everything audiences thought they knew. What sets Lawrence of Arabia apart isn't just the jaw-dropping desert landscapes or Peter O'Toole's magnetic performance. Sure, the film's visuals are unforgettable. Endless sands, blazing sun, and huge wide shots that make you feel the harshness and beauty of the desert. But the real magic lies in how the movie dives deep into the contradictions of war and empire. Lawrence is anything but a simple hero. He's complicated, sometimes ruthless, and constantly torn between loyalty to his country, his own ideals, and his growing identification with the Arab tribes he's helping lead. The film doesn't shy away from exploring the clash between cultures or the heavy cost of betrayal, both personal and political. It shows how Lawrence's idealism becomes clouded by ambition and madness, blurring the line between glory and tragedy. You watch a man struggle with his own identity while caught in a war fought far from the familiar trenches of Europe. Unlike many WWI movies that focus on bloody battles and trench warfare, Lawrence of Arabia expands the battlefield to include the psychological and political struggles behind the scenes. It's a story about power, loyalty, and the messy realities of colonial ambitions. The legendary score, the sweeping cinematography, and the iconic scenes have inspired filmmakers for generations, making this film a cinematic milestone. While Lawrence of Arabia is famous and won multiple Oscars, it's often underrated as a WWI film because viewers tend to see it as just a historical epic. But its depth, complexity, and psychological insight make it one of the most important and influential movies about the Great War. If you want a WWI movie that's as epic in scope as it is rich in character and controversy, Lawrence of Arabia is the game changer you can't afford to miss. So there you have it. 10 underrated World War I films that show the war like you've never seen before. These aren't your usual flag-waving heroic tales. They're gritty, complicated, and downright unforgettable. Which one surprised you the most? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit subscribe for more hidden gems, and share this video with anyone who thinks they've seen all the best war movies. War isn't just history, it's personal.